tweet that and host that and do all that.
My other computer, my laptop here, is running super hot tonight.
Are you Mac, PC? What you got?
Mac.
Mac, yes. Look, I love my Mac, but as far as streaming,
yeah.
Scott swears by it, but I'm like, just too many turd hoops, especially with audio stuff. Is when it works, it's freaking the best thing you've ever seen. But Windows, it's like, I'm dumb and I sound like this. Deal with it.
All right. I got that tweeted out.
I'm sharing it to Facebook.
All right. Should have some folks in here in just a bit. Yeah, no.
My iMac now resides in the kitchen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got an older iMac here. It's a 2015 model.
Oh wow, yeah, that's super. Yeah, mine was like a 2020, I believe, or 2019. And it like I said, I spent like almost 2 years trying to get it to be a streaming machine that would allow me to stream games from my PC, and just constant hate, I say.
Yeah, I've been trying to get as much life as I can out of this this Mac.
Yeah.
I upgraded the RAM not too long ago, and
yeah, we've moved on to a whole different processor type and everything now.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
yeah.
I've been looking at those new ones with the M1 chips, the new 24-inch screen ones.
Yes, don't
Those
mind
are
if I do,
nice.
please and thank you.
I think I might get one of those.
So Jason, our mutual friend Steve got a Mac Studio,
Yeah.
Ooh.
and he sent me a picture of it, and I'm extremely jealous. Like that thing's a beast.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. All right, there we go.
I still love don't get me wrong, I still use my Mac for my like my art stuff.
Yeah,
It's great for that.
It's great.
It's great for all of that. In my video editing, love it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Export time is just it blew my mind because I got a MacBook Pro in 2020,
Right.
and the first video I ever exported was like a 20-minute video, and I just watched the bar go. I'm like, what?
Sweet.
And Brian Ibbett said to tell you hi. I had him on
Oh,
the,
hi, Brian Ibbett. I saw that y'all were doing something earlier with him. I was like, cool.
Yeah, we did the Open Micers podcast with him just a little while ago.
Oh, cool.
All right.
Let's see, stream manager, hosting. Where do I do why are you always moving stuff, Twitch?
Yeah, I want to make
Host
sure
a
the
channel.
stream
There we
looks
go.
good. Because I don't trust anything tonight.
Nope. Hey man, I've been doing this since 2005. You're not gonna have something to
And then,
go sideways.
as I was
fine.
waiting for everything to boot up so I could call you guys on Zoom, like it's 8 o'clock at night and maintenance is out, and they've decided they're gonna go trim my hedges at 8 o'clock at night. I'm like,
sweet.
what are you doing?
What else is there to do in Mississippi at 8 o'clock at night?
I don't know.
Let me tell you about my day job. Every morning I arrive around 8 a.m. and every morning the parking lot cleaners who blow everything around with freaking leaf blowers. They're there every morning at 8 a.m. to meet us going,
Thanks,
like 20
guys.
minutes. I'm like, oh, God, I just want to get in here and concentrate for 5 freaking minutes. All I'm going to hear is our gas-powered leaf blowers spinning at 10
What everyone wants to hear at
RPMs.
8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. It's like, sweet.
All right, I got everything is good to go.
Yep, I got everything set up on my end. So
All right, there
All
we
set?
go. In 3, 2, 1. Greetings, programs, and we are back for another episode of the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins.
My name is Derek Diamond.
And we have a guest this evening. He is from the Play Retro Show, which is also another retro gaming podcast that you should be listening to. And he's also part of Film Sack. It is Mr. Brian Dunaway.
Oh, hi, Jason and Derek. How are you guys doing?
Doing fantastic.
Doing great.
I saw you guys had my cohort on a few weeks back. Scott Johnson of Play Retro, Retro Gaming Podcast. Yes.
Last time he was here, we talked about our, what did we do? Our top platformers?
Top 5 platformers.
Yes.
That's right. Top 5. Oh, by the way, before I forget, happy Sega Saturn release day, May the 11th, 1995. To roughly, was that 27 years ago? Yeah.
I think you're right.
Also, today is Leroy Jenkins Day. What? Like 18 years ago, 17 years ago?
That's true. Look at this. Look at that Sega Saturn. You see how this fly by this in? There's my Sega Saturn. It's been running all afternoon, waiting for me to show it some love.
I just got a Sega Saturn a couple of weeks ago. A friend of mine gave me just the console that he had.
Yes.
So I have to find all the hookups for it so I can actually see if it works.
This was my exact same deal. I went to Ohio. I live in South Carolina. We picked up. We saw a retro game store up there. By the way, it's called GameSwap. Great guys, love them up there. Picked up a Sega Saturn for about $150.
That's not bad
because I wouldn't shut up. I wouldn't shut up about it. It has all the cables and everything. No games. But I came home and I asked on the community that we have that we've been growing for 15 plus years. I said, hey, what should be my first Sega Saturn game? And a very generous community member said, I'll send you a few. I live in Atlanta. It arrived today. So I've got several to choose. I got Doom, Tomb Raider, Daytona, Virtua Cop, and a couple other games I can't wait to try out. So I'm very stoked. But I'm still
That's
just
awesome.
screensaver right now.
Yeah, got some good options.
Yeah.
Have you done this, Jason? Have you turned on the little screensaver? Turn on the music?
I still got to get all the hookups and everything for it so I can actually see if it works.
Yeah, throw that little hookup in there, throw a music CD in there, and you can watch that little spaceship go by as you listen to some sweet 90s music CDs. I know you have tons of.
I dig it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have you on because you're part of the Play Retro Show, and you are a retro gamer. You do a lot of streams doing retro games over at. You can follow you at twitch.tv/ is it the Brian Dunaway?
Nope, it's just Brian Dunaway on Twitch. On Twitter, it's the Brian Dunaway. There's another Brian Dunaway out there. He's a copyright person. He won't give it to me. Whatever.
Damn him.
Yeah, just you're right. It's BRI. So it's Bri. It's Brian Dunaway on Twitch. And yes, I do. I stream Monday through Friday, most days, 6 p.m. Eastern time. I know you guys are Central, so it's a little earlier for you. So that's not too bad, right? 5? You getting home from work or doing whatever you're doing?
Bad.
Yeah,
I try to catch your streams when I can.
Yeah. Oh, I see you.
And last time I talked to you it's been a couple years because last time I talked to you, I think was for the Pop Culture Palette podcast. We had you on to talk about comics coast to coast.
That's right. Oh my God, I haven't heard that in a minute. I used to do a podcast called Comics Coast to Coast where I interviewed web cartoonists and illustrators of all backgrounds, and we retired that show. I don't know how many years ago now, but that was a really good run. Gave me an opportunity to learn how to do interviews. I did that from I think 2008. It went a little over 10 years. So loved it. Had a great time. Great archive to go back through. Talk to people from syndicated cartoonists to web cartoonists to animators, you name it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, that was a great show. I was sad when that went away.
I was sad too, but I was like, you know what? It's good because it was starting to get a little bit harder in the webcomic scene to really get anybody that everybody knew of. You know what I mean? It was hard to get any traction because it's so niche, however you want to say it. It was segmented, so that you could only say, hey, only like 10 people are listening. Why? Because nobody knows who this guy is. I loved it.
But tonight,
it's my passion.
For our show, we had you on, and we're going to talk about our top 5 beat-em-ups. But first, we have a little bit of news to talk about. Would you like to do some news with us for this evening?
Absolutely. Give me some news. Give me some good gaming retro news. I want to hear it.
Here we go. Today's Today's stories were submitted to us by Armez Jackson and Donner, Party of Five. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, send them to nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. And this is a pretty interesting story from mynintendonews.com. From Japan, the Nintendo Switch has now outsold the Nintendo 3DS. Despite being 5 years old, the Nintendo Switch continues to sell well each week in the land of the rising sun, with Nintendo's competitors Sony and Microsoft struggling to gain a substantial foothold in the ever-changing Japanese gaming market, which is dominated by mobile gaming. David Gibson has revealed that the Nintendo Switch family has now outsold the Nintendo 3DS, selling 24.6 million units so far in Japan alone. Let's see, the popular Nintendo DS system shifted 32.86 million, so the Switch has a way to go yet to surpass the original DS. But for the 3DS, it has been surpassed.
Nice. I'm excited for Nintendo to get more money.
Yeah.
Specifically, my money.
Yeah.
During the beginning of the pandemic, I'll tell you one thing that really spurred this. During the beginning of the pandemic, which hopefully we'll, or not going to talk about much longer, is I had a Switch for my TV, which is the full Switch, and then I purchased three Switch Lights so that we could all play Animal Crossing. It was the perfect matching of, oh my God, we're stuck inside, and here's a cool game.
That game could not have come out at a better time for
It was perfect.
Not only Nintendo's pocketbook, but for people's sanity as well.
Yeah. And they're still selling them. And I'm kind of curious to see some real hard numbers, because I know, to a little fanfare, the OLED version released last year sometime, and I see people were kind of lukewarm towards, like, I don't know, do I really need an OLED? I mean, people who are using the lights are out; they don't really care that much about the high definition. And people who are plugging into a TV, what do you need one for? You just docking it. So what's the point of the OLED? So, curious to see I'm curious to see what pushed them over.
I'm also curious to see how long the Switch's run is going to go. Because we haven't heard anything about a successor.
Yeah.
And it very well could, within the next year or two, if it's still going past the original DS. Because I've mentioned this a couple of times on the show, but the DS and the 3DS, I think, still haven't got the credit they deserve, because it's a great console. I just broke out my 3DS, the other day, and it still runs great. I love it. It's got some great games for it. It's got a good virtual console.
And but I'm trying to keep up with all this, because I've really dug in deep with the retro stuff this year, so I've almost totally ignored all their news. Is the DS store, or the 3DS store, is that completely gone away now? I have a 2DS, and I occasionally launch it. I have a bunch of games for it, but weren't they like shutting down the different stores
like this month or later? I think you have until you can actually load money into the account up until like the end of this month, but you have till later this year before the store actually shuts down.
Right. I think you're right. I'll look that up real quick.
But that's amazing. Think about it. I mean, look how long they supported that thing.
I know.
And here we are on the Switch. How long are they going to support this thing? Do they even have a next plan? I don't know, Nintendo. What are you going to do?
I don't know what their next console could possibly be. I mean,
right.
Because they're always kind of on they're not Microsoft, they're not Sony, they don't have just a console and that's it, and that's what you get.
Right,
as a console. Nintendo's always kind of got that weird. Here's what weird thing we're doing over here.
Yeah. It's a nightmare right now to try to think about supply chains right now.
Oh, that's another thing. I mean, the whole supply chain thing, and then with the pandemic with the launch of the PS5 and the Xbox Series S and X, like, I feel like this console generation, like this new next gen, is kind of not, I don't know, it's kind of a lost generation, I feel like.
Yeah, and before this generation started, we were all talking a lot about, well, will we even have consoles, or will it all be done through small, tiny boxes that everything is cloud gaming? That was the question. What's the next step? Are we going back to cloud gaming?
My money is on Nintendo is coming out with the new Nintendo Virtua Boy 2.
I figure that's about the only for the unimaginative like me. That's all I can imagine. It's like, well, what's the next step? I mean, you've got portability and dockability. What else you got? I mean, VR, but are they still stinging from the VR from the Virtual
Me and
Boy?
Derek have talked about this numerous times that I feel like if anybody is going to come out with a virtual reality device that's going to just put the world on its ass, it's going to be Nintendo.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I would trust Nintendo. I have an Oculus Quest and, well, Facebook, whatever, whatever you call it now. I have the Meta 2, whatever that thing is. And I feel dirty every time I put it on. So I'm like, I know you're
nobody
watching me,
trusts
but
Facebook. I mean, they're trying to do the metaverse thing and with all that and the Oculus.
I love the equipment. I love the equipment. Equipment is awesome. What it can do, the price point, everything is perfect except the part where I have to sell my soul.
Yeah, I don't
like
want to
that part.
deal with Facebook. I just don't.
Yeah.
I'll sell my soul
Yeah.
to Nintendo all day, every day, and I don't know why. They're just as, at least Nintendo has, never tried to bring down democracy.
Yeah, I have the same feeling about Nintendo as I have about Apple, and this is just personal opinion. I feel like that they want to keep my information to themselves. They don't want to share it at all. You know what I mean? They're like, no, we're keeping this information for ourselves. Not to say that they don't do it, but I'm just saying there's more of a culture of, nah, these are our customers, no sharesies, unlike other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Nintendo's going VR just because they want to redeem themselves from the Virtual Boy.
Yeah, they got to, right?
Yeah, it's stuck in their craw since it's happened. So I think they've got to try and redeem themselves.
And it's been 25 years. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I kind of wish, I really hate that the Wii U didn't get more love, because I really felt like that I really enjoyed. I liked having a little handheld console that I could walk around the house with. And it was also a full station that I just loved the Wii U for some stupid reason. It was neat.
I never had one.
It was pretty much the prototype for the Switch.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like, looking back at it in retrospective. But to answer what we were talking about with the virtual console for the 3DS, credit card payment support ends May 23rd of this year.
Okay. Very soon.
eShop cards you can't redeem those after August 29th of this year.
Right.
But the actual store won't shut down until March of 2023.
Okay. So you still got time. I started reading the impact and stuff, and then I realized I don't really care too much, because I didn't buy digital games too much in the 2DS era. I was still doing physical medium, so I don't think anything is going to affect me as far as I know.
Yeah.
So,
I still try to go as physical games as often as I can.
Right.
Just for that
especially
simple
with retro
reason.
Especially with the retro stuff, right? And
so
I got a question for you guys. Do you guys consider yourselves like me, where I'm a gamer first and by far? I'm not really a collector. I have several games on each console, maybe 10 to 12, and that's about it. I'm not looking for any complete collections. I'm not too concerned about it.
I'm that way with most of I have most consoles. The only ones I'm missing are like the original Xbox and I gave my Xbox 360 away to one of my nephews, but I still have all my old consoles, Super Nintendo. But for the Nintendo, I would love to have a full collection of every single Nintendo game, just because I just love that system so much.
Yeah. That scares me. Go ahead, Derek.
For me, it's I want to have complete collections of certain franchises, like the two you see behind me, Zelda and Sonic, and Mario as well. Eventually, I'd like to have a copy physically of all those games, but I'm not, outside of that, I'm not too much of a completist.
Right. Perfect. That's a good way to put it, Derek. Yeah. I'm not a completist either. But I'm with you. I'm like certain franchises. I find it interesting because when I've started doing this retro thing, I've started having people in the community donate things to me so I can review them and that type of thing. And it's interesting when they send me like a whole collection, like I got a Game Boy Color, and Robin from Texas sent me the Game Boy Color and all the games she had. And she had several Zelda games. And it was just interesting to see the collection more than going, I wish I had every Game Boy Color
Yeah.
game. I'm like, that'd be nice and all, but I think I enjoy better looking at this and going, wow, Robin was really into, X. And it's just really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Let's see. Our next story comes to us from our favorite site, NintendoLife.com. Fans have created their own Metroid 64, and it looks incredible.
Ooh.
The Metroid series famously skipped the Nintendo 64 back in the 90s. The lost game Metroid 64 was never in development, with Super Metroid director Yoshio Sakamoto saying that he couldn't imagine how Samus would move around a 3D environment with the N64 controller, which we'll get to the controller here in a second. We only ever got to see and play as Samus in the very first Super Smash Bros. On the console, and that just feels wrong. Let's see. Twitter user Luto Aquino has shared footage of his vision for Metroid 64, which was created using Unity 3D. Using a third-person perspective, you can see Samus running around a purplish cave area, shooting at small blocks with her arm cannon. And there's a link to the video on the article as well. Brian, did you hear about this?
I have not heard about that, but I have been doing some Metroid homework, and I also have my N64 here. That's kind of a Pokemon Yellow. I don't think it's official, but yeah, I hate this controller, but I also love it.
That is the worst controller ever made for any console.
It's up there.
If you don't know what it is, it's got that you can hold it in a couple of different ways. In one way, you can use the analog thumbstick, which is brutal on your thumb, and it's just way stiff and uncomfortable. But yeah, I didn't know about this 64 thing they were doing. I do know about several fan-made Metroid projects. Was it another Metroid AM? I forget. Anyway, people have been doing this for a while. Their little homages to this. I'm kind of surprised Nintendo hasn't put a slap on them. Is this something that
I'm sure
Nintendo
they will.
Yeah, I'm sure it's coming.
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah. They usually wait. They usually wait until you've completed it.
Yeah, and then
I don't know why they
down.
do that. If you can announce that you're developing it, that you're doing all kinds of stuff, you've got plans. You can look at Nintendo and say, "Look what I'm doing," and they're just kind of like, whatever. And then as soon as you go, "Here's something for people to download," they go smack, and they just knock it down. That's what Nintendo does.
I think that's on purpose. I think they do that on purpose so that people won't go through making entire games and then get smacked down.
What a turd company it is sometimes. But I love it's same thing. I love hate this controller and I love hate Nintendo.
Exactly. So, that's how we are on this. People accuse us of being Nintendo apologists, but we rail on Nintendo as often as we praise them.
It's hard to look. They're still around. I loved Sega way more than I love Nintendo, and Sega made decisions and they ended up going bye-bye for the most part. And so and that makes me sad. And I wish they kind of had maybe a little different fight and maybe been a little bit bigger jerks maybe somewhere.
Yeah, because Nintendo had some awful business practices back in the 80s and 90s.
They still do. They're just such but I'm not going to apologize for Nintendo ever. Never. They don't need my help.
But before we go into our topic for tonight, Derek, would you like to shout out our lovely patrons?
Absolutely. We want to shout out our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/NerdCaveRetro. Shout out to Daniel Salmon, Tyler Watson, AxeBlade07, Armez Jackson, Hand Solo, Carlos Longoria, a.k.a. Rampage, Staff Sergeant Sketch, Gus and Penny, Matthew Salmon, Mike Eveland, and Mr. Brandon Rutledge. Thank you all so much for your continued contributions to the Nerd Cave Retro, keeping the lights on for us here at the show. And if you want to be a part of our awesome Patreon, you get early access to our fun commentary tracks. And we're actually talking, in the group chat with me, Jason, and Wally about what we can possibly do next. We've done fun movies like Christmas Vacation, Clue, even not so fun movies like Super Mario Brothers and Double Dragon. But you know what? Those are two of my favorite. Well, I was lucky in that I missed out on that one. Yeah. So I dodged that bullet, but we'll see what we come up with next. So fun, regardless of how good or bad the shows or movies are, we have a blast doing them, and we hope that you have a blast listening to them as well. If you want to sign up, just head over to patreon.com/NerdCaveRetro. And for new patrons, send us your social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. so we can give you a proper shout out on the social media machines.
And tonight we will be talking about our top 5 beat 'em ups. And the way we like to do this is we're going to go round robin style. And we'll start with you, Mr. Dunaway. Start with your number 5. Well, actually, usually we do some runners up. So if you'd like to start with your runners up and then do your 5, you could do that.
Sure,
then,
sure.
We'll
So I have the top 5. Okay,
Yeah.
so didn't make the cut. I gotcha. Also, once I get started on my top 5, do you want me to list them like this is my least favorite of the top 5, and then go up to my number 1 and like build up, or you just whatever?
Yeah,
Just random?
I mean,
Okay.
however you want to do it, but we usually do the build up.
I didn't list them in order that way, but I'll have to think about it for a minute while I mention my honorable mentions. Now, beat 'em ups. I realized when I started thinking about this, you sent it to me. I'm like, oh, you know what do I really like about beat 'em ups? And what do I prefer, a side-scrolling beat 'em up? Do I prefer more of a fighter kind of beat 'em up, like a one-on-one beat 'em up? I'm like, turns out I'm a side-scroller. Didn't know it, but I do want to mention a few things like early DNA stuff of these beat 'em ups. I can't not mention Kung Fu Master. Such a great freaking game. I love that game, and it pretty much has what I love about the side-scrolling beat 'em up. This constant enemies coming, you kicking butt. There's not really much jumping or a lot of moves or power-ups or stuff that really define beat 'em ups later on. But it's there. I loved it. I love the music. I love the vibe. Dug it a lot.
Yeah, I love Kung Fu Master. And Kung Fu, the original black box game for the NES, almost made my runners-up list. But that's actually a pretty fun game, even though it's really short. It's a very fun, I think, necessary game to have in your Nintendo collection.
I agree 100%. I'm going to say Castle Crashers is one of the beat 'em ups that really captured my imagination in the interim between the retro and the modern age. I played so much of that. I kind of got forgotten about beat 'em ups for a while. And when Castle Crashers came along and I started playing it, and I was like, wait, this is a beat 'em up. I'm really having fun. And so not in my top 5 because I haven't went back and played it again, but it definitely reinvigorated some of that. I got kind of a cheat too. I got one cheat, and then I'll start in my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a fight game, and it's more 3D, and it's not side-scrolling at all. And you might not even say it's not even really a beat 'em up. But on my Dreamcast, I had 2 games when I first started. It was Crazy Taxi and Dead or Alive 2. And it was going to be one or the other, and I loved my Dreamcast. And so for like probably a good 6 months before I could afford another game, I played the crap out of Dead or Alive 2, and it really gave me a little bit of the beat up feeling. It's not strictly a beat 'em up; it's more of a fighter. But I just love that game, and no one talks about it mainly because it's a little bit too sexy. But that's not.
I was going to say that's the booby game.
Yeah, that's the booby butt game. It's a sexy game, but it's also sexy in its moving and game. I just liked how it played. It played really well.
There's lots of defying of physics in that game.
Absolutely. And that may
the
give you a
PC
clue.
way of putting it.
Yeah.
Right. And that may give you a clue into some of what I'm going to talk about beat 'em ups, because I'm not sure. I'm like, am I like middle of the road? Am I picking of my top 5 beat 'em ups, or am I just a little bit soft when it comes to some of this stuff? Because I remember the Konami, Capcom eras of great beat 'em ups, and I mostly stayed in the Konami area. And so I'm going to start right now. This is Battletoads is my number 5.
Battletoads.
Not Konami. Battletoads. What do you think?
That's the dark horse, because Battletoads is one of those games. Like the first level, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to get through, and then it ramps up in difficulty to the point where you're just like, I cannot do this. I just can't do this.
Well, I mean, okay, so Battletoads, it's my Genesis. It's one of those times, once again, it's like, okay, how many games do I have? Every time I started a new generation console, it was always I had a few in my hands, and I played the crap out of those. Battletoads was one of those games. Plus, I mean, all the characters are named after skin conditions. And there's a lot of humor. And I feel like a good side-scrolling beat-em-up needs to have a little bit of humor. So I'm going to go with Battletoads. In increasing difficulty, it reminded me a lot of some of the other games I'm going to mention just in a minute, and you'll know why. Maybe it'll make more sense why I picked Battletoads. Am I going too fast on these, or should I like?
No, you're
No, you're good.
All right,
Perfect.
good pace. Next up, number 4, Altered Beast, also for the Genesis.
Not a bad pick.
Yep. I like
Not a
it.
bad pick. It's brutal. You get to fight against Uncle Fester at the end of each stage when he transforms into to a beast as well as you.
My
And
favorite part of the game is when you swell up all muscular, but your head
Yes.
stays small.
Yeah.
Yes, when you start powering up, you power up. First of all, you gotta rise from your grave, and then you rise from the grave, and then you come up, and then you get your power ups, and so it's got the most basic of the DNA for me for the side-scrolling beat 'em ups. Plus the fact that you get to become large. First of all, one of the things I loved about these, I noticed that the larger the sprites were of the characters on screen, the more I seemed to like them. It seems like so the Ultra Beast has some really large sprites. I don't know if you've ever looked at it and said, "Wow, that's a very large sprite," which is good because the sprites are you get to see all these muscles. This Altered Beast dude, you really feel like you're doing something. You're punching things. You're really meleeing your way through through these levels. So I gotta say, Altered Beast. What do you guys think? Get Altered Beast?
I
that
like
number 4? Is
Altered
that
Beast.
good?
I never played it as a kid until the Sega Mini came out.
Okay,
and
yeah,
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 played it.
yeah. By the way, listeners, if you don't have a Sega, if you don't have a Mini,
It's so
you need
worth
to get
it.
a Mini. That is like one of the best ones. Now they're still fairly easy to get.
Mhm.
The NES Mini is probably the best out of all the minis, but it's hard to get and it's expensive. The Sega Genesis Mini, pretty abundant, and it's got a great library, and you can hack it and put more ROMs on there, which I've done. It's got a great emulator. But Ultra Beast, like I said, I just got much love for it. It's big, it's silly, I'm just constantly punching and mashing buttons. That tickles everything. It's kind of short though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really short actually if you're good at it.
A lot of those games are short from back in the day. I've noticed, like
Yeah,
games that
yeah.
felt like, because I could never beat them, felt
Yeah.
like they would just take hours and days to beat. But
Yeah.
now that I'm actually better at games now that I'm older, and can actually
course.
beat some of the games I couldn't beat as a kid, thanks to
You're
YouTube
like, "That's it?"
videos. But they're so short. Like
They really are. I think you're intimidated when you're a kid, whereas because my reflexes aren't getting faster, so it's
Yeah.
like maybe I'm just getting a little bit less intimidated by this giant monster because that was always intimidating. I mean,
Mhm.
I remember being, I'm like my character is this big and your character is this big. I can't beat you, but that's not how it works in video games. And
Yeah,
so yeah,
I don't know how I got better at games the older I got than when I was a kid.
Right.
That's all I
Right.
did all day as a kid
It's-
was play video games. You would think I would have been better than I was at these games.
Experience and confidence, my friend.
Yeah.
Jason, you're more experienced and confident now. Also, Ultra Beast had the other thing that was in my list of what I look for in a beat 'em up. I like stages, and I like to fight a boss at the end of each stage. That's
yeah.
not always true of what you're doing because sometimes you're playing, like we mentioned, there's other types of beat 'em ups, but that seems to be the thing that gets me. I like to have to rescue somebody at the end, whether it be, whoever, whatever. I like for me to, get to a point where I defeat all the bosses and then I get like the screen where it's like, oh, you saved me. Thank you. Yay. Me, I beat him up. Number 3. This is the hardest part. My top 3 are my top 3 arcade, some of my favorite games. They all happened between 1989 and 1993, and they're all Konami. And it's always hard for me to pick. So I'm going to slide in at number 3, X-Men Arcade.
Oh,
6-player
Yes.
beat 'em up extravaganza. I usually played as Nightcrawler. I was a big fan of the X-Men back in the day, still am. And getting to play as Nightcrawler, one of my favorite characters, and bamfing across the screen.
Yep.
It was so good. And this was later in the Konami beat 'em ups licensed IP games. And so They had like great power ups, and they had like special powers you could use once you build up a certain amount of energy. You could use special powers. It's also like a saving throw almost. It's like, oh no, I'm almost dead. You get one more, and
that game was so frenetic too. When you get
Mhm.
everybody gathered around playing that game, and they always
Right.
had it cranked up to 10 in the
Yeah,
arcade.
it was a double cabinet. So you had the 4-player machine. This is the parts I really like about beat 'em ups, the multiplayer. The other two I kind of mentioned because those are the ones I played at home. I really dug it. I didn't play with Battletoads with anybody. Hey, nobody wanted to play Battletoads with me. It was all me. I could have, but
It
I
was
didn't.
too hard. That's
It's
why.
too hard. No, like quit. I'm out. I don't know who Itch is, but I'm out. So yeah, on the X-Men Arcade, you had the 4-player, which no one wanted, but you'd have a 4-player, you had to choose from 6 characters, or you had a 6-player, where you could have 6 people playing all around, and that's just some crazy time beat 'em ups, man. And preferably, it would also have the. I don't think any of the 6 ones. I think all the 6 ones had to have the two arcade machines together with the 2 monitors.
I think so. And
I
didn't they
remember
have
correctly.
some of them had the monitors up top too, so that
Yeah,
everybody
so-
gathered around could see what was happening too.
Right. Oh, that was some of my favorite parts. That was usually, I think maybe the local distributors who would add the extra monitors and stuff. I don't think that was distributed that way, but yeah, I'm with you. I love the arcade machines that put the extra monitors up top so you could watch, because you're crowded around them. It's beat 'em ups. You got your couple of buttons. You got your your stick and your buttons, and you're slamming, and nobody can see. You're looking like, oh, I want to see what this guy's doing.
Yeah.
And so it was always good that they could see behind you. But X-Men, localization of that thing was hilarious because I don't even know if it was a localization problem. I don't know if you guys remember, but Magneto was constantly yelling in that game.
Yeah.
And actually most of the characters were yelling in that game, and they would say the dumbest stuff. And that made it even more enjoyable. So you're probably starting to think, oh, Brian kind of likes stupid stuff. Well, yeah, that's what I like.
I'm trying to remember some of the stuff that because you guys had captured some of the voice work for that game.
Magneto would call you he would call you X chicken, to insult you, X chicken, and he would also say, what was the one phrase? So these games had really short sound clips, and the programmers would put those sound clips together, and there's like a couple of clips that are like they don't make sense at all. It's like, welcome to death.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was just like these put together these weird phrases.
There was another one where he says something weird like, I have
Welcome
the power.
to death.
I have the power of magnets or something like that.
Yes, I have the power of I have the power of magnets, which is actually, if we did a deep dive on this on the Play Retro show, if you like really deep dives into that kind of stuff, we found out where the X-Men come from. This inspiration, some of the guys at Konami really liked the X-Men short, not the 90s short, not the 90s series, but the one that was in the late 80s. I think it was called X-Men Pride of the X-Men. It was like a 22-minute standalone pilot that really didn't lead anywhere other than to this video game. And so they kind of took that plot, and so he actually says some of those dumb lines in the X-Men Pride of the X-Men, which you can watch on YouTube. It's like 22 minutes. I totally recommend. Wolverine is on there.
I'm gonna have to watch that because I've never seen that.
Yeah, he's got
I
an
need to watch it
Australian
too.
accent. Yeah, Derek, you gotta watch. He's got an Australian accent. It's hilarious. It is great because Wolverine is Canadian. So,
We all know Canadians. They like to throw shrimp on the Barbie and
right.
kangaroos and Fosters.
An Australian played him in live action, it turned out. So it was almost like foreshadowing.
That's true. It's like life meets fiction.
Yeah.
Now on the X-Men, the cool thing about these beat 'em ups, those Konami beat ups, where you could, if in some configurations you could choose the character you were going to play, but lots of times it was set up to where you would go to the joystick that would be attached to the specific character. And I always like to do Nightcrawler. There was Dazzler, Colossus, Cyclops. Cyclops is lame. Who else was there? Did I say Wolverine? Maybe I need to say Wolverine twice. Storm. Storm is a freaking beast in some ways, because her special ability, of course, she just like ravages everything. It's just clears the whole screen. I think all of them do a clear screen though. But the more people you had, if at least you have 4 people when you're playing the X-Men arcade beat 'em up, you're usually doing pretty good. If you're playing by yourself, you're usually doing pretty poorly. It's a hard game.
Yeah.
It's a hard game. Yep. Let's see. Okay, so now number 2, the Simpsons Arcade. Also Konami.
Yep.
4-player beat 'em up. This one allows you to do some things that we hadn't seen until this one, which was you could have 2 characters together. Like you could have Marge and Homer, and if you're in the right area of the screen, you could pick up Marge and swing her around as a special move. So I thought, wow, man, that is cool, because this is like some level of cooperative play that I haven't seen ever in any games. I'm sure I just didn't see it, but it was really cool here. Plus, it was also a property that I loved, even though, do you guys know when the Simpsons game came out, there'd only been 1 season of The Simpsons, and it was going into season
early.
2. Yeah, and so it's like, it's amazing going back and playing that game. First of all, Smithers is the bad guy. What a weird thing to do. Something about Smithers steals a diamond from Mr. Burns' place or something, and Maggie gets involved and ends up getting the diamond, and so our damsel in distress this time is Maggie. And so we gotta go to his little stage bosses. I think you fight Mo in one, or it might be a fake Mo. I can't remember. Is it a fake Mo? I don't know.
I can't believe they never was able to port that game to make a home port of that game. It just blows my mind that they never did. That game was
it would have done
popular.
huge on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It seemed like there was a reason why they didn't do that. This happens a lot, and usually the answer is Nintendo bought the rights and refused to let anybody else publish it. I'm not sure if that's what happened here, but I definitely know Nintendo is known to do that. They'll see an exciting property in the arcade. This is back when the arcades was big.
Yeah.
And they would buy it just so nobody else could have it. And then they would just shelve it. And I'm like, what are you doing?
I mean, we got a ton of Simpsons games in the NES,
some good
Super
ones.
Nintendo, and there were some good games here and there, but nothing like that arcade experience. That just beat 'em up arcade.
I love the Grand Theft Auto / Crazy Taxi
Hit and Run.
Yeah. Those were fantastic. But I'm not talking about. But there are some beat 'em ups in that too. I think a little bit of beating up. I can't remember. But the Simpsons Arcade was a lot of fun. Once again, 4-player. You'd choose your position, or you'd have a 2-player model of it, and I think you could choose one of the characters. And you got to Marge had a vacuum cleaner she would swing, which is very effective. You wouldn't think it'd be effective. I think Homer was the closest to the true beat 'em up in the fact that I think he just hit with his fist.
Yeah.
I don't think he used much any melee weapons or anything. And who else? Bart had a skateboard, and I always forget Lisa, because I always think Lisa has a saxophone, but I've retconned that in my brain, and I think she had something else.
See, I could have sworn it was the saxophone too.
Yeah, that's what she was known for.
Right, and they have Bleeding Gums Murphy in the thing. And so I thought, well, they've established that in the storyline by then, but it's not. What the crap is it? It's something weird. It's not like a cat or something. I can't recall. I played that not too long ago, too.
I'm looking it up.
It may have been a cat. That
may have been a
familiar.
cat, right? I would love to see the cat. Like, I just don't think she would do that. She's very conscientious about that kind of stuff. But it would be hilarious, though.
Pretty sure it was the saxophone, though.
Lisa had a jump rope.
A jump rope. See?
Because that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Right, that's not Lisa. Lisa doesn't jump rope. Season 1. What do we know about her character? Smithers a bad guy, and Lisa carries a jump rope. Why not? Anyway, the beat 'em up part of it, the beat 'em up part is fast, fun. There's a lot going on. All the scenery in the background is amazing. You're fighting through Springfield, as it was season 1, and yeah, I can't hardly think of a beat 'em up that I like more than that one, except for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's right. We had to get there. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in many forms. I love the original, but Turtles in Time is the better. Larger sprites, just better action. I can't speak enough about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles enough. Turtles in Time. It is the best beat 'em up. I can play it over and over again, and I dropped in so many coins to do this. Was that the one with the? No, they didn't have. The second one was not the one with the theme song from the cartoon. The first one was the theme song from the cartoon. What was the second?
Yeah.
What was the attract mode on that one? You guys remember?
I don't remember.
I want to say it was like an offshoot or something. Like it's like from like Turtles 2 movie or something. It wasn't like Go Ninja, Go by Vanilla Ice. It was something else.
Yeah. I do remember the first game had the actual theme song from the cartoon.
Right. And unlike Battletoads, we got Renaissance painters in this one.
It's actually playable.
It's playable, right? Donatello is my man. That's who I would usually play as.
Oh, Donatello's always the best. Even in the original NES game, which everybody hates, but I love.
Yeah.
Donatello's the best one to play in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The NES version of the SNES, which is it? Is it on the NES or SNES? Now I'm getting confused.
The Super Nintendo had Turtles in Time.
Turtles in Time.
I think that was the one that I really liked. That was the one I really liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I also had Matt from Canada sent me an SNES, and I've got Super Ghouls and Ghost on there, but I need to pick up the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Time. It's next.
You want to talk about a hard game?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't want to beat that up at all. Get out of here.
Well,
Too much.
Derek, would you like to do your list now?
Hope I didn't take too much time and talk too much.
That's awesome. No, really good discussion. So for my honorable mentions, so I do have to preface this with a rule that I have with these lists, and that's I limit my top 5 to 1 entry per franchise. So
okay,
I would have put the original TMNT arcade game, but because of another game that we just talked about, which is on my list, the original arcade game made it to honorable mentions. One game that I loved as a kid because I was a huge fan of the actual property. And it's interesting because Brian, you and Scott were talking about this on your beat 'em up episode. A lot of these games are very similar, but they just have different characters and different universes. But for some reason, we all love them, even though we knew they were kind of the same. But it's like, okay, Simpsons beat 'em up. Yeah, I'll play it. Ninja Turtles. Yeah, absolutely. I'll do it. So what made my honorable mentions was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie. There was a game based off the original show, but then one based off the movie specifically, and that was the one that I played as a kid. I was a huge Power Rangers fan.
Right.
Went back and I found a copy of it when I first started collecting old retro games, and we started doing the show, and I'm like, oh, I remember this game. I remember loving it. Sat down, played it, like, this is just okay. I mean, it's almost obnoxiously easy, but I liked being in that universe, so I had to throw it in for the sentimental reason.
Reminds me of
for my
nothing wrong with that.
Street Fighter, the movie, the game.
Oh yes! Oh my God! Yes.
Oh man. So my number 5 is one similar to the Power Rangers. I was a huge Spider-Man fan growing up. Again, if I saw Spider-Man attached to it, I had to get my hands on it. So my number 5 is Spider-Man Maximum Carnage.
Oh, yes.
One of the few decent LJN games.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember reading that, saw that it was made by them. I'm like, I can't remember if this is going to be any good, but went back and played it. It's actually not terrible. It's not the best beat 'em up, but I mean, you get to play as Spider-Man and you get to be in that world. And if you're a Spider-Man fan, what more can you ask?
Dude, they totally have on their soundtrack of that game Mob Rules.
Yes.
By Black Sabbath.
I was going to bring that up too. I'm like, I see what you're doing there, Spider-Man. But I have fun going back and playing that game.
Yeah. Now I play is Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage on the Genesis the same as the one on the SNES? Is that where you're playing?
I played the SNES version, but I do believe they're the same.
Right.
So there's this one and then a sequel to it, which was called Spider-Man and Venom Separation Anxiety.
Okay.
Which I'd never played that one, so I couldn't comment on if it's any good or not. But my number 4, and people might be surprised that it's this low, but it's Final Fight. And that's because I was only recently introduced to it. I didn't play it when I was younger. I found a copy. I actually got a really good deal on it about 3 years ago. I found it at a local retro gaming store.
Nice.
And saw it and was like, well, I've heard great things about it. Very, very solid game. I just don't have the sentimental value that I do for my top 3, which is why it's a little bit lower. But I have no real complaints about it. Plays great. Love the music.
Yeah, it's the character design for me for Final Fight. I mean, if everything, it's always the character design for me.
Everything in that game, from the music to the sprites, the size of the sprites, the way it controls, and I would highly recommend getting the Capcom collection that has the arcade version of Final Fight that you can get for the Switch. Highly, highly recommend getting that.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
My number 3, as we talked about before, X-Men the arcade game.
Yes.
I didn't have a ton of arcade experience as a kid because I lived an hour away from the closest one. So if I got to go to the arcade, it was a big deal.
Right.
And there were 2 machines that everyone crowded to, and one of them was the X-Men, and it had the 6 players. It had the monitor where you could watch, and you'd almost be like a kid at Christmas waiting in line, to get your chance to play. The X-Men animated series was so popular back then. Who didn't want to play as one of the X-Men and fight Magneto?
Right. Who didn't want to play as Dazzler? Wait a minute.
I did not play as Dazzler. Funny enough, you mentioned Cyclops. He was the person I was most looking forward to playing. And I remember playing as him for the first time. I'm like, he kind of sucks. So I switched to Wolverine, and that was my go-to guy whenever I did that. But it just did such a great job of capturing the fun of that world.
It really did.
Number 2, the Simpsons arcade game.
Oh, look at us.
We're not done. We're not done. But so there was a movie theater about 30 minutes from where I grew up, and they had 3 arcade cabinets, and one of them was The Simpsons. And my friends and I would get to the theater early specifically to play that game. And I always liked playing as Marge because she was like the Donatello.
Yes,
she had the long reach, so it's like it was a no-brainer for me. And I loved, as you mentioned, Brian, the combos that you could do with Homer and Marge or Homer and Lisa, and it was just something that you'd never been able to do before.
Plus, it was fun to see Marge get lit up, and she would have the bunny ears under her hair and stuff.
Yes.
I knew it.
Yeah. So Simpsons it's an amazing arcade game. I did find out, Jason, that it is available on Xbox Live Arcade and PS3, and I do still have my 360. So I'm like,
I was in Walmart last week, and they had a Simpsons Arcade 1-up in there, and it was marked down to $199.
Oh, that's good.
And I was like, this close.
That's a replayable one. A lot of the 1-ups, I'm like, I don't know how many times I would play this particular game, but that one's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If we lived in the same area, I would say you should have texted me and we could go halvesies on it.
Yeah.
That's an amazing deal for a arcade 1-up.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, $200 for this? That's crazy.
I looked it up online today, and it's going for like $500.
Man, maybe I should just go buy it and go sell it on eBay.
Yeah, get $300 of profit.
Yeah.
But my number 1 is actually one of the first games that I ever reviewed for the show when we started it back in 2016 is Turtles in Time. Love the original arcade game. But there's just, I mentioned this when Scott was on the show with certain games. You almost get transported back to where you were when you played these certain games. And for me, one of those is Turtles in Time because I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles growing up. Still have all my old toys. The first live action movie was the first movie I ever saw in theaters. Cool. Huge Ninja Turtles fan. And I could just remember almost getting lost in that game the first time I played it because the graphics still hold up. It looks great. Like that style is timeless.
Yeah.
The music is perfect. I find myself on YouTube, I'll look up the soundtrack and I'll listen to it while I'm at work because it's just so good.
Yeah.
But there's nothing quite like getting friends together and playing that game, whether it's was in the arcade or on the Super Nintendo. It's just a perfect multiplayer game and the perfect side scroller beat 'em up to me.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I'm with you. I never got in an argument over who I was going to play as. Even though if I couldn't get Donatello, I wasn't heartbroken.
Yeah.
I was still going to have fun. It was always a good time.
Because they're all good. They all have their strengths.
Yeah.
And for my
Mr. Robbins?
list, my runners-up, I have 3 on my runners-up list, and we've talked about all 3 of these. X-Men, the arcade game, of course. If Wolverine was taken, my go-to was always Colossus. Still love Colossus to this day. He still hasn't been... I loved Colossus, and was it Deadpool 2 that Colossus was in?
Yeah.
Finally got represented on screen, because I've always loved Colossus.
I loved him in the comic books. He's hard to represent in film.
Yeah, but they did a great job in Deadpool 2.
Yeah.
And, of course, The Simpsons. Simpsons is still one of the best arcade experiences you could ever have. So when that game first came out, it was... You couldn't get near the machine. I mean, you were lucky if you got to actually play it when you got to the arcade, because there were so many people gathered around that machine. And then, of course, Turtles in Time, which is, awesome game. Ninja Turtles, can't go wrong.
Now you got me fascinated. Now you got 5 slots you got to fill, and none of them contain those 3.
Yes. So here we go. At the number 5 spot on the PS4, I played Streets of Rage 4. Holy crap.
That is a fantastic game.
What a great game that is. If you have not played it, what are you doing with your life? Go pick up this game right now. It is so wonderful. It is a wonderful, wonderful game to play. I can't say enough good things about it. Just go play it.
It's top out of all the Streets of Rage for sure. It's the best one out of all of those.
It takes everything that you love about that genre and just takes that silliness that the beat 'em ups are, and just cranks it up to 11 with current gen graphics, and it's just it's so good. Number 4, this one's a dark horse because it doesn't hold up well.
Battletoads 2?
No. Double Dragon for the NES.
Yeah.
I just have so much nostalgia for this game. I can still remember. And me and you, Brian, we're roughly the same age. I'm going to be 45 in a few weeks. And
right. Speak for yourself. I'm still 34 now. That's about right. You got it.
Was Double Dragon a huge deal when you were a kid? When it came out?
Absolutely. Double Dragon was a very important deal. But once again, like I said, I stayed for some reason in the Konami area, and as well, I am not a Nintendo apologist. I did not even have an original NES on the first go around. I didn't get one until later. I was a Sega Genesis kid, and before then it was a Master System. That's right. I was Sega all the way, and before then, it was. I just never really got into the NES craze. I don't know what happened. I don't know how I missed it. So there you are. But Double Dragon, totally aware about it.
I mean, it was just when that game came out, it was all my friends could talk about. It's all we could talk about. We, just even to this day, seeing that box, that cover art, that red box with Double Dragon, and then the 2 dudes, looking like, Predator, like just big ass arms and just like.
See, that was I always felt like that from Nintendo. I would always see I felt the same way about Atari. Nintendo would show you one thing, and it's like, look at these bad dudes. Bad dudes, by the way. 2. But then you would go to play it, and it's like, what are these little guys? They're little muscly, little small guys and kind of cartoony,
Mhm.
and that was always a disconnect for me. But once again, I thought it was fun. I did get to play it at a couple of friends' house, but the problem was, of course, they were all obsessed with it, and I would come over to play, and I would feel like a goober, and
My
I would
only
just go, okay, this isn't fun for me.
my only problem with the game to this day is that it's very slow. It's not
Yeah.
fast paced
Yeah.
at all. Like it's a very clunky game. The controllers are a little clunky. I wish it was more fast paced, but the nostalgia just wins for this
Yeah.
game, and that's why it's in my top 5.
And you're not alone, man. There's going to be so many people that are going to agree with you 100%. Double Dragon all the way.
For my number 3 spot is, of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, the actual
first one.
arcade game, not the arcade game for the NES, which it's okay, but it does not hold up as well to this day. I think the very first Ninja Turtles game for the NES holds up way better than the arcade game does
interesting.
for the NES, but as far as the actual arcade game, it doesn't get any more nostalgic and better than the original Ninja Turtles game.
All the way back to 89. Yeah. Do it.
I went to
You got to
the-
save April O'Neil. Her building is on fire.
Yeah. I mean, I went to the skating rink a few years ago, and I hadn't been to the skating rink since I was like, in middle school. And I
Yeah.
walked into the skating rink, and I hear it, Cowabunga! And I'm like, holy shit, that thing's still here? It was like 25 years later, that machine is still there. And I sat and played it for like an hour just because that game's just so good.
Yeah, the attract mode on that thing is way better than the next one. But it is, I'm glad to hear that you also had a skating rink with like a little mini arcade. Because I used to play Dragon's Lair
Oh, yeah.
at ours. That was the big one at ours, was plopping 50 cents at a time in that quarter eater.
I always wanted to play Dragon's Lair, but I just couldn't bring myself to drop 50 cents into
Yeah.
it because I was not good at it, so I would immediately die like 3 seconds after plopping in 50 cents. I'm like, I got like 8 seconds into this game, and I'm out 50 cents.
Is boy, the only person getting beat him up in that is you.
Yeah,
With that 50 cents.
exactly.
Yeah.
I like watching people play it, but as far as playing it, no.
Nah.
Good. I do have a sad story about Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, though. Around the time that this game came out, I remember my mom and dad were going to the mall for something, and I had like $20 that I had saved from like doing chores or whatever, and I was going to take that $20 and go to the arcade and just have myself a good old time. We get to the mall, and my parents go shopping, and I say, hey, I'm going to the arcade. Come. This was this is like 1989, so no cell phones. I tell my parents, just come get me when you're done. I'll be in the arcade. So they go do their shopping. I go to the arcade. I get in there. I walk up to the quarter machine, and I'm about to have me a good couple of hours of arcade play. And I reach to my back pocket, and my wallet is not there.
Oh,
I left
no.
my wallet at home. So
Yes.
I had to walk
done-
around the arcade for about 2 hours just listening to Ninja Turtles beckon me, and I had
I've been
no
there.
money.
I've been there. I've actually had to walk around the arcade and gone, I have no money. I guess I will play retro Twitch, where I will watch other people
Yeah.
play and have a good time. And I'll stand there and make funny commentary.
And it wasn't
And
like
then
I
something
could
goes
go find my parents because, like, they're somewhere in the mall. I don't know where they are, and
Right.
I'm supposed to stay put in the arcade. So I
Yeah,
couldn't
you can't-
leave.
You can't call them. You can't
Yeah.
call them on their cell phone because you don't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
And nobody has a cell phone.
Doesn't
so, What do
exist.
you do?
Yeah. What's a cell phone?
So
Yeah.
that's
So what you do is
that
you go to the
sucked.
mall. You go to the mall office and you go,
Oh, yeah.
can you page my parents for me?
I could have done
Embarrassing
that,
embarrassment.
but I was not that smart.
yeah, you left your wallet at home. I mean, come on.
Yeah, the day I was supposed to have the best arcade experience of my life, I left my wallet at
Right.
home.
That's life.
Number
In a
2
nutshell.
is something that I reviewed very early on in this show was Batman Returns.
Ah,
for the
that's a great
Super
one.
Nintendo. What a great! All it is a Final Fight reskin with as
Yeah.
Batman. Is all it is.
But it works.
It's so good.
I'm a sucker for IP, right? So yeah, I'm down with it.
And
good gameplay and IP.
if you're looking for a great Batman game, I mean, the original Batman game for the NES is still a great game, holds up to this day. But the Batman Returns for the Super Nintendo, still hands down, like one of the best beat 'em ups you can get for that system. And then my number one is, of course, Final Fight. The arcade version, the Super Nintendo, any version I could get my hands on of that game is great. Right. Everything about that game is great.
Yeah. You got to do it, right? That's where you got to live. And I'm glad we got some Capcom love in this list. I was kind of worried. I was like, "Oh no. I've picked my Konami and now we're going to die by it."
It was a Konami fest.
It was a Konami fest for a minute there, but then it changed. It changed over to Capcom. I generally find that's how it is. Usually people are either going to be kind of in one camp. I'm not saying that it doesn't cross over, because I have a huge appreciation for a lot of the Capcom games, but usually is pick a lane. And my one's always Konami.
Capcom was such a seal of quality. Even to this day, Capcom still makes great games. But even back then, the fighting games, like the Marvel versus Capcom game, is great. Street Fighter is great. I mean, all those games are great. And Final Fight is definitely one of those. It just brings me joy to play that game.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love all that. I like beat 'em ups, man.
Yeah,
it's what I like to do.
Oh, they're fun. They're so fun.
And of course, mashers. We had some of our listeners throw in their top 5 lists over the last week or so. Put the call out on our Discord and our Patreon for people to give us their top 5 lists. And Brian, do you have time to stick around for a few more minutes?
Do it, yeah. I can go a couple more minutes. Yeah, it's only 10:09 here on the East Coast of America.
All right. Here we go. We have Mr. AxeBlade07 who says, here are a few of my faves. TMNT Arcade, XMen Arcade, Final Fight, Streets of Rage, and Double Dragon. And he pretty much just copied my list.
What a nice bag. Yeah, they covered a little bit of everything there. Perfect.
Yeah. Mr. Picola Asian, a.k.a. Brandon Rutledge. Here is the list from yours truly, the Emerald Coast Fact Checker, Brandon Rutledge. Sit tight for a bunch of honorable mentions. Of course, his honorable mentions are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade version, Final Fight, Streets of Rage 2, which Streets of Rage 2 is a great game.
Yes.
Die Hard Arcade. I never played Die Hard in the arcade.
I didn't either.
I did not play the arcade. I did emulate it a while back, and it was all right. Same for the Alien Predator that I never played in the arcade, but I emulated it recently. Yeah.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World, Castle Crashers, Captain America and the Avengers, which I'm going to review soon.
Yes.
Zombie Revenge and 3 Dirty Dwarves. I've never heard of that.
I'm intrigued, though.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. What did I hear about that? Because it also piqued my interest when it's like, what? That's a weird title. But that Captain America game, I couldn't find the joy in it, so I'm glad somebody did.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm gonna review that soon because it's always kind of intrigued me, but I don't think I've ever played it.
It's a weird one for me, but yeah, I'm glad somebody likes it. I'm glad people like it.
And for his top 5, he's got number 5, Double Dragon 2: The Revenge. Number 4, The Bouncer. Never heard of The Bouncer.
The Bouncer. That sounds familiar.
Anybody
but everything sounds familiar.
Heard of
when
The
you get
Bouncer?
To the age.
Number 3, The Simpsons. Number 2, X-Men. And number 1, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time.
Yeah, The Bouncer, PS2 game. I do have vague memories of this.
I do not have any memory of that.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah. That's because it's listed as forgotten games.
Yeah.
It's everybody forgot
of
about
course. Armez Jackson, who says, this was a tough list for me because it's my second favorite genre in gaming. Number 5, Golden Axe, the arcade. You know, that almost ended up in my honorable mentions.
Mine as well. I just had to pare it down, and unfortunately, I didn't make it.
Yeah, I reviewed that not too long ago here on the show, the Genesis version, and
it's always for me. It's always the Genesis version.
Yeah.
That's the best one.
Let's see. Number 4, Streets of Rage 2, which,
Yeah.
like I said, that's another great Streets of Rage game, it's basically just a Final Fight, with their answer to
Right.
Final Fight. And they actually did a really good job with Streets of Rage. Double Dragon 2 for the NES, which, of course, I do think Double Dragon 2 is the better game, but it doesn't have the nostalgia factor that the original Double Dragon has for me. TMNT, the arcade, and then number 1, Final Fight Arcade. Final Fight's landing a lot on these lists tonight. A lot of love for that game.
It's fighting its way back to the top.
Yeah,
beating 'em
old
up.
Hager.
Oh, Hager, yeah.
Yeah. I still want them to make a movie with Hager and Cody and Guy. I think it would be great.
I always think I do, and then it happens, and then I'm sorry I did.
Yeah. Mr. Tyler Watson, one of our good friends over here at the show, coming in at the wire here. He sent this today. Here's my top 5 list. Number 5, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith for the Game Boy Advance. He says, I know what you're thinking, but just go with me on this. I was skeptical about it at first too, but it's a great game. You pick from either Obi-Wan or Anakin and play 3 events of the movie, fighting through waves of battle droids. It actually sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never played this. I know of it. I remember it coming out, but I just never played it.
I never heard of this.
I shy away from Star Wars games a lot, to my detriment. But I usually win because most of them suck, and only a few of them are cool. So once everybody else, once the dust clears, I'm like, okay.
For Play Retro, you guys should really cover the Super Star Wars games for.
Oh yeah.
The 16-bit era, because those games.
I'd actually thought about it this past week because we were discussing what we were going to do for the next episode, and I was actually thinking that we might do a Star Wars theme. We mostly stick in Play Retro. We mostly stick to 8 and 16-bit era. We do get into the 32-bit a little bit, but not very far.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's coming. We got to get there.
Number 4, the Punisher arcade game. He says, one of the best Marvel arcade games that you don't hear much about. You play as the Punisher and or Nick Fury to take down the Kingpin. Said he once had a birthday at a local arcade as a kid, and they gave everyone a bunch of free tokens to play with. My stepbrother and I used a number of ours to beat it. That's a good memory right there.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Punisher is it just didn't have the saturation in the market, because I've heard several people who say that that's one of their favorite beat 'em ups, but usually people go, I never played that one. And so
I remember the Punisher game for the Nintendo, and it was sort of a weird kind of first-person shooter, but it wasn't a light gun game.
Light guns. We're going to talk about that on Play Retro one day. I can guarantee it.
I'd like to go back and try it, because you actually use the controller to move the reticle around the screen. And I remember actually liking it as a kid.
Yeah.
But I don't know how well it holds up.
I was playing Virtua Cop on my Sega Saturn. Happy birthday. And this afternoon. And it had that little, you did it with the control, you moved it around, and it put the little crosshairs on it. And I was like, this is kind of not going to be fun. But then they found a way to make it fun, because whenever a bad guy would show up, instead of it always staying static, it would kind of zoom in on the guy. So you have a little better chance of hitting him, not have to, and the cursor moved pretty fast.
That's the good thing. If you're going to do that, at least have the reticle move fast and not be like,
or move too fast.
Yeah. Gotta find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Number 3, Final Fight Arcade. What more could be said about this game that hasn't already been said? We've said a lot tonight. Still one of the highest heights of the genre. Steer clear of SNES version, and it's always a good time. Now, I'm going to have to say, nay, sir, because the SNES version, even though they didn't have Guy, and it's very hard, I still love that version of the game, because it was one of the very first Super Nintendo games I ever had.
Yeah. But no Guy, once again, like you said, no Guy.
They did add him in later, so you can get the version with Guy. Number 2, of course, XMen, the arcade, always one of the loudest games in the arcade. It made sure you knew it was there, and that attract mode. and it's still a great game. Nightcrawler was always my go-to character.
Love Nightcrawler. He bounces around the screen like you wouldn't believe. It's not realistic because Nightcrawler doesn't exactly zip around the screen and clear everything off. He's a bamf. He does bamfs here, bamfs there, but it was still pretty cool.
He's that good secondary character you need. Like if you're gonna have, your Colossus is kind of like your tank. You want to have your good melee character, like him that can
Dazzler.
bamf around all over the place. And then you've got poor Cyclops in the back just sucking.
Right. What was bad was Dazzler wasn't like really huge, and when I was reading or watching the cartoon, and suddenly you're like looking at Dazzler in the XMen Arcade, and you're like, "Where'd you come from, Dazzler?" But she was pretty effective as a character, though. But I like that part.
Yeah.
But Storm was bad, eh? She just tore it up.
And his number one is TMNT Turtles in Time for the Super Nintendo. One of the games where he enjoyed the sequel more than the original. The game is just 10 kinds of fun and favorite of his wife and his to play together. And it has some of the best music in any game. Loves to jam out to Sewer Surfing and always play as his favorite turtle, Donatello.
Sewer Surfing, man.
Yeah.
Sewer Surfing.
Those are fun levels. And his honorable mentions are Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Streets of Rage 2, Sunset Riders. I forgot about Sunset Riders.
Yeah,
Sunset Riders.
Me too.
Very close to it's like beat 'em up adjacent. This is one of the ones I actually picked when we were doing our Play Retro Show version, and it technically is kind of a shooter, but it plays way more like a beat 'em up.
Yeah, it's a weird game, but it's worth playing because it is kind of that weird hybrid. And then Dungeons and Dragons Chronicles of Mystara. I've never played
I'm glad somebody mentioned that one. I didn't have a lot of experience with it, but I do know a lot of people who love that one.
What was that for?
Which system was that on? I can't remember. I can't recall. That's a good question. Probably not the Genesis.
And the King of Dragons is his last one. I do not remember
King
of Dragons.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
Is that a Japanese import, maybe?
I don't know.
Somebody's laughing at us right now going, "Don't you guys know?
You guys are idiots.
You guys are morons." Shadow over Mysteria was an arcade game, so it was just arcade. That's the reason why I didn't remember it. So, Capcom, of course. Capcom.
Yeah, I completely forgot about Sunset Riders. That should have been
a
somewhere.
good one.
Yeah. And Brian, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. I would do it anytime, Jason and Derek. Thank you guys for letting me hang out and, give my opinions.
And we'll have to have you back again.
Of which I have many.
And next time we'll let you pick what the top 5 is going to be.
Oh, no. I'll let you pick because that's more fun for me.
Okay.
That's one of the things I love about Play Retro. Even though I do pick it lots of times, I don't care what the subject is. I actually like it when people pick something that I'm not super familiar with at the beginning. And then by the time I get through, I'm a freaking expert because I spend, oh my God, so many hours reading interviews with developers and reading history stuff. Got a real passion for this thing right now.
That's why we love doing this show, is getting to play all the stuff that we never got to play, or things that we always wanted to and just never got to, and now that this stuff is readily available to us, why not go back and play all those things we never got to play?
Yeah, to circle back around to what we were talking about at the top of the show, that's the reason why. That's one thing I had to decide is a plan. I had to say, okay, am I a completist collector? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I needed to decide that because there is a part of me that says, oh man, I missed out. Fear of missing out, and I'm like, I want to play every Nintendo game, and I want to play every Sega game, and I want to play all of it, and I'm like, do you really? There's a lot of crap.
It's gotten
There's a lot of crap out there.
It's gotten very hard to collect for the Nintendo and Super Nintendo last few years. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I just don't find loose carts out in the wild anymore.
No, and part of the problem is that people are becoming serious collectors, and there's actually a lawsuit going on right now with one of the companies that does in the last couple of years, especially. They started grading games and stuff. Like, okay, we're grading, but not on the quality of the play, but on the quality of the collection that you put in a plastic box that no one touches.
Yep.
bump that. I want to play a game. Give me that card.
So
Stick it in my machine.
We actually should cover that, Derek. We haven't talked about that yet. The lawsuit going on against WADA right now.
Yeah.
Because of all the horrible things they're doing to the collector market right now, because of speculation and all that. It's bad. It's so very bad right now. And now is not a good time to be a collector, because you are going to overpay for everything.
It really is. It's not a good time to be somebody like you said, looking for just single loose cards. Because I'm not. I like CIB. I like having complete inbox. But if I could just get the game, I'm really just looking for the experience.
Yeah.
And I like to keep things in good shape. So I'm a good person as far as making sure it doesn't get destroyed. But I'm also not gonna worship it and put it in a plastic case and stick it on my wall and go,
Yeah. I know that feeling.
It. Yeah.
But before we go tonight, I do want to tell everybody that we are moving the live show next week, starting, what is that date, Eric?
May 16th.
May 16th, we're going to be moving the show to Monday nights at 6 p.m. Central. 6 p.m. Central for Nerd Cave Retro, 7:30 for open micers, and then Derek will be doing feature presentation at 8 p.m., and these are all Monday nights. So your Monday nights are covered from now on.
Mondays.
I haven't come up with a name for it yet, but it's going to be our version of the old Disney Channel afternoon time block.
Yeah, it's like
if you remember that from the
sweet.
90s.
Of course.
Like Manic Monday or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll come up with something.
But yeah.
Derek loves Mondays. Yeah.
Brian, where can everybody find you on the interwebs?
Hey, you can catch me on Twitter at the Brian Dunaway, or you can catch me on Twitch. I'm usually at one of the two places. It is just it's just Brian Dunaway on Twitch. See, even I forget how it is. We also have a great Discord server. If you're ever on the Twitch channel, we blast it out constantly in the chat room. We have a great community, a couple of hundred people in there. And it's always a good time. We like to talk about everything. We like to talk about movies, old movies, new movies, crappy movies, good movies. We talk about video games, retro video games, hardware, because I'm a man of many interests, Jason. Many interests.
And Film Sack is still one of my favorite all-time favorite podcasts. You guys are what, like 600 episodes at this point?
I think we're almost to 600. We've been doing it around 11 or 12 years. We are doing Zathura. If you don't know what Film Sack is, it is where we look back at movies from usually days gone by to see if it holds up. And we make commentary and the funny, we hope.
Yes. It's so good. Go follow all those shows. And Derek, what is going on with feature presentation?
Feature presentation returns this upcoming Monday, as we mentioned. 8 p.m. Central Time will be on YouTube. We'll be live every Monday night, so be sure to subscribe on YouTube. The audio version will be out Tuesday morning on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And also be sure to follow the show at Feature Pres Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And on the Open Micers podcast, which is at Open Micers on Twitter and Instagram, last week we talked to Robbie Hennig and Jesse McCann of the Old Rob podcast, which is one of the funniest podcasts you will ever hear in your life. And then this week we got coming up, will be released Friday morning, is with Mr. Brian Ibbett from Coverville, and of course the morning stream, and also Film Sack. So go check that show out, and then go follow everything over at Frog Pants and Brian Dunaway and Scott Johnson. Go listen to Play Retro Show. It is so good. I love that show so much. Film Sack morning stream, where you get to hear Brian Dunaway do his little game show segments.
We do the morning half-asses, where we have answers. We have 3 answers that are correct and 3 answers are wrong, and me and Scott compete. And then hopefully our listeners get to win some prizes like Steam game codes and sometimes physical merchandise as well. But we do that on Mondays and Wednesdays.
Don't forget the Tadpooly Feud as well.
Tadpooly Feud is on Wednesdays. We poll the Tadpool, which is our large community, or our larger community, and they always come up with great things, like their favorite Baskin Robbins flavors ice cream, which I failed at entirely because we don't have a Baskin Robbins. Whatever.
I don't think I've ever
I'm not
eaten
bitter.
at Baskin Robbins, even though it's my namesake. But oh well.
Yeah, it's good. It's fine, but I don't know any of the flavors, so needless to say, I lost.
Well, go check all that stuff out. And Brian, thank you again for hanging out with us. And we're going to go ahead and get out of here. If you'd like to email us, you can email us at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. We're at Facebook, facebook.com/nerdcaveretro. And, of course, Instagram and Twitter at nerdcaveretro, at jfunktastic, at Derek_Diamond, and, of course, at the Brian Dunaway. Go check out our merch. ncrmerch.com. We got shirts, hats, bags, all kind of stuff over there. ncrmerch.com. patreon.com/nerdcaveretro, or as little as $1 a month, get you all those extra episodes. And if you can't do that, I understand. Times are tough. Go leave us a review wherever fine podcasts are sold. So Derek, please tell them what it's all about.
Leroy Jenkins.
A fellow chucker, eh?
That was a fun episode.
Yes.
That was a hoot.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for hanging out
Yeah,
with us.
thanks
man.
for taking the time.
Absolutely.
I don't want
Solid,
to.
Jason Derek had a good time, man.
I don't want to wait another 6 years to have you on the show again. Let's
6
do.
years, gonna be at least 6 more years.
Yeah.
Jay, I'm still Jason, I'm still playing with that capture device
Oh,
you
that,
sent me, as
IO
well
data?
as the IO, and also I did a little comparative. If you're ever interested in knowing about it, but I also ordered a StarTech. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that brand, but they usually do like cable adapters, and they had like one. It was a capture card, but instead of having the HDMI, so instead of converting all the crap over and then putting it into HDMI, it
Yeah.
actually has a component and S video directly into it, and the latency is actually less than the IO, but like just like milliseconds of frames. I had like the X-Men game
That's
for
cool.
the Genesis.
Not
And
to
I was,
interrupt, but
in-
I got to get going, guys.
Okay.
Brian, thank you
See
so
you, Derek.
much for taking the
I'm
time.
going to go ahead and end
Yeah,
the
man.
stream. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see